Whatever happened to predictability? The milkman, the paperboy, evening TV. You miss your old familiar friends, but waiting just around the bend. Everywhere you look, everywhere there's a heart, a hand to hold on to. Everywhere you look, everywhere there's a ghost of somebody who needs you. When you're lost out there and you're all alone, a life is waiting to carry you home. Everywhere you look, everywhere you look.
Alright, so what are y'all's Thanksgiving plans?
I'm probably gonna go home.
Yeah?
Go
What are
home
you
to
gonna-
see family.
That's nice.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna do the same thing.
Be nice. Do it.
Alexis.
Hey, Alexis.
Hey, how you
How's
doing?
it going?
What's up?
Good, how are you guys?
Good. We're just
Hey.
talking about Thanksgiving plans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking earlier today how far we've come. I was thinking the other day how we were in the forming stages early in the semester and how far we've come.
Yeah. That was pretty awkward.
We're past that.
It was very awkward. Trying to figure out who everybody was. Trying to meet for the first time.
Okay, so what are y'all's majors? Anyone? Okay. I'm FYCS, so
I'm back.
okay. That's good. Do you like it?
Sometimes, yeah. I like it. It's a good major.
FYCS.
No, cool. Same.
Yeah, Meg.
You like it too?
It's alright.
So, y'all have any ideas on like what we can do in the class?
Okay.
Thank gosh we're past that and got into the storming phase.
Yeah, and then the first time we went to the norming phase, when we came to Danielle's house for the first time, and we established that there was no phones at meetings, and we were gonna get on our computers and get our work done, and then we could play later if we wanted to.
Yeah.
Figure that out. Once we moved to the performance stages, once we moved to St. Augustine, you know, we all clicked as a team. We all knew each other, knew each other's boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we started really performing. To get
Yeah.
out there more.
Along the way, we learned a lot about conflict management and how collaboration was the best way to manage some conflict.
Remember when we played pool the other day?
Oh yeah,
Got pretty heated.
Yeah.
sure did.
We resolved it well though.
Mm-hmm. Hey man, I say go for the one ball.
Do the one shot.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe you should go for the 2-ball because
Come on, man, the one ball's an easier shot.
you might hit the 8 if you go for the 1.
That would be a better shot.
Yeah, I didn't see that. I didn't
Good
see that.
shot.
Go for the 2.
Glad you got it in there, pal.
Oh, maybe not. And we learned how to make decisions as a team the best way through consensus.
Hey, what do y'all want for dinner? We have spaghetti or tacos.
Taco Tuesday?
Taco Tuesday?
Taco Tuesday.
Taco
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Taco Tuesday. Those are pretty delicious.
Yeah, those were good.
Mhm.
Good choice, good choice.
He can't be.
And if we could offer any advice to some future teams, we would say recognize that it's awkward from the beginning, but persevere and embrace it. Because now look at us.
Whatever happened to predictability? The
I was a
milkman, the
researcher, and
paperboy.
since St. Augustine is the oldest city in America, my role was to research the historical significance of the places that we visited. So everything that I gathered was used towards the virtual field trip, and also ensuring that our team members had an educational experience as well, as they were able to get some context and background knowledge of the places that we visited.
As a scheduler, it was my job to work closely with the navigator and the researcher to make sure that we were going to the right places and in a timely manner. I was also multitasking, working with everybody in the group to make sure that we picked the right date to go. It was also my job to make sure that we arrived on time, had sufficient time to spend at the location that we chose, and then also left on time in order to get back to Gainesville at a certain time.
So my role within our team was to be the treasurer. My first job was to create a budget that was feasible for each team member that we could allocate towards our trip. I worked very closely with our scheduler and with our navigator, Kyle and Coley, first to make sure that the locations that we chose to visit on our trip were within our budget, and also making sure that gas money was allocated within our budget.
As a navigator, my role was to make sure the safety and arrival of my team members to St. Augustine. I worked very closely with the scheduler to allocate times and flexibility of my team members' schedule to make sure our times were all worked out so we got back in there on time in a timely manner that we were supposed to.
So, as facilitator and historian, my responsibilities included taking photos and videos throughout the trip and documenting key moments that could go towards our project and our virtual field trip. So that included taking group photos of every stop as well as 360 photos on an app.
Everywhere you look.
Our team project was to take an educational day trip to St. Augustine, Florida. On Saturday, October 26th, the 5 members of Team Success traveled from Gainesville to St. Augustine, where we spent the day together. Prior to our trip, we met to plan our activities and establish a budget for our field trip. St. Augustine is the oldest continuously inhabited European established settlement in the United States. There is a great deal of history enveloped within this city. After researching the many historical sites in St. Augustine, we narrowed down our list so that it fit within the time frame and monetary budget that we had to work with. At each of the spots during the day of our field trip, we collected written and photographed data to document our trip to be able to share with the class. After arriving in St. Augustine and finding secure parking, we first traveled by foot to the Castillo de San Marco. At each stop, Alexis provided information regarding the history behind the place in which we were at. Next, we traveled to the oldest wooden schoolhouse, located off of St. George Street. On the way to our next stop, we pursued the shops that line St. George Street, rich with local businesses in the food, clothing, and art industries. Next, we made our way inside the Cathedral Basilica of St. Augustine to take in the beauty of this place of worship for many people in the city today. After making it past the shops, we then traveled to the campus of Flagler College. We had a student at the college take us on a tour of the campus and allowed him to educate us on the history of the school. After being in St. Augustine for several hours, we made our way to the historical Columbia restaurant for lunch, spending time together and discussing the trip thus far. We anticipated our last stop being the lighthouse. Returning to our car, we drove to the St. Augustine Lighthouse, one of St. Augustine's most notable landmarks. After spending time at each of these sites, we made our return drive back to Gainesville, Florida. Since we have completed our trip, we will compile all of the data that we collected on our trip, and we will create a virtual experience using Google Maps to share our trip with our class.